It was Christmas Eve. The air was thick with the smell of roasting ham, expensive perfume, and the kind of tense, forced merriment that only happens when 3 generations of wealthy, dysfunctional family are trapped under one roof. We were at my parents' sprawling estate, the house where I grew up, and it was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the stage for my public, humiliating execution. It all started when my father, Robert, raised his glass for the annual toast. He looked directly at me, a cold, triumphant glint in his eyes that I had learned to fear since childhood. He didn't wish me well. He announced my eviction. He lowered his glass and said, loud enough for all 30 guests to hear, "I've made a final decision regarding the family business succession. Since Amelia chose a useless, common laborer for husband, she has forfeited her claim to any future assets. Amelia, you and your husband, Mark, are no longer welcome here or in the company. Get out." He didn't just disown me. He insulted my husband, Mark, a good, hard-working carpenter, right in front of everyone. The entire room went silent. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation, the kind I'd spent my life trying to outrun. But before I could manage the automatic, choked apology I'd been trained to give Mark, my quiet, steady, unassuming Mark stood up from the crowded dining table. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He looked my father directly in the eye, and his reply was soft, chilling, and utterly devastating. "That's fine, Robert, but you should know that I've already bought the land your new corporate headquarters is supposed to be built on. You and your company now answer to me." My father's face went from triumphant stone to ashen terror in 3 seconds flat. The question I wrestled with, as the entire room collapsed into stunned chaos, wasn't whether I should accept Mark's defense, but how far we should take this financial counter-attack, knowing my father's entire corporate future was now completely in our hands. Was I wrong to let my husband use his quiet, unimaginable fortune, a secret I barely knew about, to systematically dismantle the comfortable, arrogant life my father built on my misery? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. To truly understand the depth of the betrayal and the brilliance of the counter-move, you need the history of the Stewart family and the story of Mark. My father, Robert Stewart, was the patriarch of a successful, decades-old manufacturing conglomerate. He believed in bloodlines, legacy, and, most importantly, control. My childhood was less about love and more about performance. I was the heir apparent, the one groomed to take over the company, but only as long as I adhered to Robert's precise, rigid plan for my life. My mother, Eleanor, was always a passive spectator, caught between her husband's monstrous ego and her children's desire for normalcy. The first major fracture came when I was 25. I met Mark. Mark wasn't a business school graduate or a lawyer. He was a carpenter, a true craftsman, who specialized in restoring old, beautiful homes. He had calloused hands, a calm demeanor, and the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need a boardroom to feel important. I fell instantly and deeply in love. Robert saw Mark as a fatal flaw in his perfect succession plan. He started with the snide comments calling Mark a dirt merchant or a common laborer, but escalated quickly to ultimatums. "Marry that boy, and you lose everything, Amelia. The company, the trust fund, the name. Choose wisely." I chose Mark. We had a simple, beautiful wedding, and the moment I walked down the aisle, I knew I had signed my own financial death warrant, but I also gained a life I actually wanted. For the last 5 years, I was the family's black sheep. I was allowed to attend major holidays, but only as a public exhibit of my failure. Robert kept me on a short leash, letting me work in a non-essential, low-ranking administrative role in the company, just enough to dangle the possibility of reconciliation, ensuring I stayed within his orbit. He used my meager salary as a constant reminder of what I had forfeited. Every holiday, every company meeting was an exercise in passive-aggressive torture, usually revolving around how successful my younger, compliant brother, David, was, and how Mark was a drain on my potential. Mark, meanwhile, was utterly unfazed by Robert's venom. He continued his carpentry work, specializing in high-end, bespoke restorations. I knew he was good, very good, but he was always private about his finances. He drove a modest truck, wore plain clothes, and we lived in a comfortable but small apartment. He was always working, always investing his profits back into his business. Whenever I asked, he'd just smile and say, "I'm building something sturdy, Amelia, something Robert can't touch." I always assumed he meant a sturdy life and a sturdy marriage. I had no idea how literal that statement was. The trigger for the final explosion was the announcement of the new Stewart corporate headquarters. Robert, needing a massive ego boost and a physical symbol of his legacy, had been planning a multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art corporate complex on a prime 20-acre lot of undeveloped land just outside the city center. This project was his obsession, his legacy, and the key to securing his massive bank loans and retirement. He had been bragging about the deal for months, claiming the purchase was nearly finalized. The plan was to close the land deal right after the new year and break ground by spring. The entire future of the Stewart Empire hinged on that specific piece of land. At the Christmas Eve dinner, after the appetizer course, Robert stood up, glass in hand. He praised David, my brother, for his sound judgment and business acumen. Then he turned to me. "And finally," he sneered to Amelia, a warning to all, "choosing sentimentality over stability is the ultimate failure. Your husband's income can barely keep you in rent. I am formalizing the succession. Immediately, David is the sole heir. Amelia, you are officially and permanently out. Effective immediately, you are terminated from your minor role, and you are both to leave this property and never return." The humiliation was complete. I felt the familiar weight of my cousin's pity and my aunt's judgment. I just wanted the floor to swallow me whole. That's when Mark, sitting quietly next to me, laid his napkin neatly on the table. He stood up slowly, a stark, powerful figure in his simple dark clothes, amidst the black tie and velvet. He addressed Robert, not with anger, but with an unnerving, almost professional calm. The silence in the room was deafening. "That's fine, Robert," he repeated, his voice clear. "But you should know that I've already bought the land your new corporate headquarters is supposed to be built on. You and your company now answer to me." The reaction was instantaneous. My father dropped his glass, the sound of crystal shattering on marble. "That's a lie," he roared, his triumphant mask dissolving into pure, panicked disbelief. But Mark didn't flinch. He reached into the inside pocket of his plain jacket and pulled out a single, neatly folded document. It wasn't a threat. It was a deed. "The sale closed 2 days ago, Robert. The parcel is now owned by * Timberline Holdings LLC *, and I am the sole owner of Timberline Holdings. You missed your deadline by 48 hours. I own the land. Your $50 million project, your bank loans, your retirement, your entire corporate future, is currently squatting on my property." The chaos was glorious. My mother gasped. David looked utterly confused. Robert's face was a masterpiece of dawning terror. I was shaking, not with fear, but with the dizzying, exhilarating realization that the quiet man I married had just publicly destroyed my father's life. Mark hadn't just stood up for me. He had taken control of the entire game board. He later explained that his high, end restoration business wasn't just carpentry. He had quietly specialized in purchasing severely dilapidated, historic properties at basement prices, restoring them with his own labor, and selling them to tech millionaires at a massive profit. He had been doing this for 15 years, creating a vast, liquid real estate empire that was, by then, conservatively valued at over $65 million. I had married a secret tycoon, a master of stealth real estate acquisition. The land my father wanted was merely the cherry on top. A perfect, strategic property Mark had identified months ago and quietly secured through multiple layers of holding companies, solely as a protective measure should Robert ever try to ruin me completely. The irony was exquisite. Robert, the patriarch, was obsessed with the land. Mark, the common laborer, simply bought it under his nose. So that's the situation I was in. I had just been publicly disowned by my father, only to discover my husband was a multimillionaire who had secured the ultimate financial leverage over my father's entire corporate existence. I could have told Mark to sell the land to Robert for a massive profit, saving my father from ruin while securing my own future. That would have been the easy way out, the merciful choice. Or I could use this sudden, catastrophic financial leverage to force Robert to account for every single moment of cruelty, neglect, and the ultimate act of public humiliation. I wanted Robert to lose not just money, but the very control and legacy he valued more than his own daughter. Before I tell you the cold, methodical way Mark and I delivered the final verdict, a verdict that ensured Robert and David would never again taste success, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized discrete financial gain and peace, or would you have used the $65 million weapon to orchestrate Robert's total and catastrophic financial and social ruin? Seriously, let me know what choice you would have made right there. I chose the orchestrated, total ruin. Robert didn't deserve a soft landing. He deserved a public, crushing lesson in consequence. Mark and I retired to the kitchen for the final discussion, leaving a stunned, silent dining room behind us. Robert chased us, his face purple with rage and terror. "Mark, you common thief! This is extortion. Name your price, you peasant." Mark leaned against the counter, completely calm. "It's not about the price, Robert. It's about consequences. You kicked Amelia out of her family and insulted her husband in front of everyone. You made her a display of your control. Now you lose control." The next few weeks were a masterclass in financial warfare. Robert's lawyers, frantic, tried every legal maneuver to seize the land, eminent domain claims, contract fraud accusations. But Mark's acquisition was flawless. His lawyers, who had been quietly managing his empire for years, were seasoned experts who laughed at Robert's desperate attempts. The real leverage was the bank loan. Robert's bank had provided a massive financing package for the new headquarters, contingent upon the successful closure of the land deal by the new year. With the land now owned by Timberline Holdings the bank's security dissolved. We gave the bank an anonymous tip regarding the sudden land ownership change. The bank, seeing their $50 million loan in jeopardy, issued an immediate call for Robert to provide replacement collateral or risk default. Robert, having stretched the company thin for the project, had no collateral left. The climax was not a party, but a corporate meeting. Robert, David, and their legal team met with Mark and our lawyers in a neutral, sterile conference room. Robert was haggard, his suit rumpled, the stress having aged him 10 years. David was silent, useless. Mark finally spoke, his terms simple and brutal. "You have two choices, Robert. you are in technical default on your bank loans. I can simply keep the land, and the bank will initiate foreclosure, collapsing your company, ruining your retirement, and making David bankrupt by association. Robert started to plead. Mark held up a hand. Or option 2, I sell the land back to the bank, saving their security and your loan, but the price is everything you ever valued. Mark's demands were not cash, they were institutional. The first demand was the ** irrevocable transfer of 51% controlling interest in the Stewart manufacturing conglomerate to Amelia Stewart **, not Mark, but me. The second demand was Robert's immediate, permanent, and public resignation from the company, stepping down entirely in disgrace. The third demand was the liquidation of Robert's personal assets, his yachts, his unnecessary property, to cover the astronomical legal fees he had incurred trying to fight us. Robert hesitated for 2 agonizing minutes, looking at the collapse of his entire legacy. He finally nodded, a broken, defeated shell of the man who had kicked me out on Christmas Eve. The aftermath was total and deeply satisfying. Mark sold the land back to the bank for exactly what he paid for it. He didn't want the profit, he wanted the power. He didn't need the money, he needed the leverage. I became the controlling shareholder of the Stewart conglomerate. I didn't take Robert's name off the building, I left it there, a monument to the man who lost his empire because he insulted the wrong man's wife. I immediately installed David as the figurehead CEO, letting him take the burden of running the old, debt-ridden business, while Mark and I, managing the company through my controlling interest, slowly but surely moved all the truly profitable assets into new holding structures. We stripped the company of its core value, leaving Robert's legacy as an empty husk. Robert now lives on a severely restricted corporate pension, which I control in a small apartment, constantly ranting about the common laborer who stole his empire. He sees David running the slowly shrinking company and believes he is still passing on a legacy, unaware that David is merely my employee, managing the decline of a shell corporation. My mother, Eleanor, finally left Robert and now lives quietly near us. Mark and I now travel extensively, investing in new ventures that actually help people. The entire $65 million empire Mark built remains our secret, quiet foundation. The greatest victory was watching my father realize that the man he called a useless, common laborer was actually a financial genius who valued character and loyalty more than he valued money. A man who saved my life and gifted me an empire, all because I chose love over my father's greedy plan. The final victory was walking back into that house weeks later with Mark's arm around me and leaving my new official resignation notice on Robert's desk, effectively firing him from his own company. Like this video if you believe Amelia and Mark delivered the perfect, justified financial karma. Subscribe for more stories about secret trusts and spectacular revenge. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think forcing Robert to stay and watch the slow decline of his company, while David was the nominal CEO, was the perfect revenge, or was taking everything too cruel? I'll see you all in the next story.